It is Victoria.
And
It's
it's
that's
Valentine's
not
Day.
yes, happy Valentine's Day. I
Oh,
wasn't
I don't
saying
know what
it's
you were doing with the intro.
that's not what I was saying. I was saying it
Oh.
is, comma, Victoria, comma, episode 200. We made it.
Oh, that's not what I thought you were going to say. Happy Valentine's Day,
Yes.
episode 200. I sent all my friends a picture of a cool dog for Valentine's Day.
You did.
Heck yeah.
Um
I woke up this morning at like 11:30 and then my brain just like was like, you are very awake now. And then I immediately rushed and grabbed my phone and just like tapped out a message to Gabe, and I was just like, Gabe, be my Valentine. And then I was just like, I have for you, I said something like, be my best friend Valentine. Here is Google Images, the second Google image result for purple flowers. And then I put a picture of purple flowers, and she was like, oh, thank you, I'll be your Valentine. And
it has such
have
like
a way
sub
with words.
Club Penguin spirit to it. I love it.
Thank you. I thought it was really funny.
So on this episode 200, Victoria, what are we talking about?
The album 70 finale. Yay!
Yes. I'll get more later, but I realized this is the first album in forever, and I doubt it was on purpose, but to have like a cohesive theme that carries through every episode in it. There's a common element of theme through everything. Anyways, what episodes are we talking about through here?
What's the theme?
We'll talk about it when we get there.
Like, change? Finding a way is the theme, but I'm trying to put it into like cohesive one word or two words. Okay, so our first episode is the Protector.
Yes.
Disclaimer, I listened to these a couple weeks ago, so I might miss some things. Okay. You might just fill in anything I miss.
Yeah, I've listened to them twice now, but it was at least a week and a half ago last time I listened to them,
So I listened to the Protector while running around, playing as Ven, getting very, very lost. I was basically lost. Like I said with the last episode, I was in the process of getting lost in the last episode because there's like a maze inside Enchanted Dominion in Maleficent's lair when you're Ven.
In the process of getting
lost. Awful to get through. And then
I'm not lost yet, but I'm getting there.
And then this episode, I was just fully lost the entire episode. It was not fun.
What's the other episode we're talking about?
The other episode we're talking about is the finale, which is Let's Call the Whole Thing Off, which does not have to do with musicals. I was wrong about that. And Jules isn't in it, even though she's heavily mentioned. It was kind of
although it does have to do with calling.
Yes.
Yes. And things going off.
Yes, and also calling things off. Just a very appropriate title. So, in The Protector, this one is another like Wyatt Bridget episode, and it carries off where we basically
episode 908, written by Marshall Younger.
Yeah, we basically left off where we were with jumping in. Mm-hmm. And Bridget's acting weird, and Wyatt's just like, so I did this superhero quiz, and apparently I'm like really good at protecting people, and I have like a protective instinct for people. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, I was thinking like, yeah, I can see that. That tracks. Like,
I mean, because
he's very protective of the people he loves.
When I was re-listening to it, they very much said that to him, like at the end of the opening, like after he saved Bridget, and they were like, you know, because he was all down on himself about, like, you know, not being brave and stuff. And they were like, look at you, like, you had this amazing protective instinct to see when Bridget was in trouble and you helped her. Mm-hmm. And they, like, very much, you can, listening to that episode again, you can see, like, how their encouragement, like, planted that seed directly into him that then caused this episode.
Honestly, there was, like, a lot of cohesion between this and that episode. And really good,
I liked
especially
it.
since I didn't think that like we would get more Wyatt and Bridget
Yeah.
in this season, and if we did, I didn't think that it would like tie so heavily into the last episode. I didn't think we would talk about that episode again,
Yeah,
really.
especially when we talked about that one and I talked about how much I loved the stuff that they showed on Bridget's side of things, even though it was
Mm-hmm.
mostly in the background. And then this episode is like, I adore this episode and also why it has a storyline.
Yeah, and oh my gosh, I was just so happy with this episode, which really made me feel strange because I was raging at Birth by Sleep while I was playing it, but I was just like, but at the same
I'm
time, this
so
episode's so
happy.
good. um, and then also by the end of this episode, I did make it out of Maleficent's lair without having to look up a walkthrough, which I almost had to do because I got super, super lost. And then I was just like, during the whole like washing Bridget's hair thing, I was fighting the final boss, so I was just like thriving. I was just like, yes, thriving in real life and in Odyssey
I
and in
think
this
I
video
almost cried
game.
when I heard that the first time because it was
I
such a
was very
beautiful scene.
emotional.
It's
I
funny to me how
had
playing games and listening to stuff to the first time, I don't know if it's this way for you, but the first time I listen to something, whatever I'm doing at that time becomes like inextricably linked in my mind
yes.
when I listen to
Well,
it in the
that's why
future.
I don't know if you've noticed this, Devin, but I typically always talk
Talk about what
about
you were doing.
what I was doing.
Yeah.
Like, I remember the first time I ever listened to the Jubilee Singers, what house I was at on our street while I was doing our paper route.
Yeah, same
Like,
thing. Like album
I
51 and
I
52,
remember
I can
listening to
still remember the things I was doing the first time I listened to them.
yeah, I remember like it's not even just the first time with me. It's just like any time basically, or like any time where I'm really paying attention to the thing I'm
Uh huh.
doing and equally paying attention to Odyssey.
Yeah.
Like I remember like one specific time, even though it wasn't the first time I'd heard the episode, walking back from like the dead end and delivering newspapers
Hmm.
and listening to not 3-in-1, but like the Odyssey or like the
The
Truth
Truth Chronicles.
Chronicles,
Here I am.
Connie. Yeah, here I am. And like listening to the um, Garden of Eden bit
Hmm.
and stuff. Like it's so weird.
The thing
It's
from
so
back
weird.
then that really sticks in my memory is listening to like all of album 52, but especially like the Mystery of the Clock Tower and Wooten's Broken Pencil show while I was like stuck in bed while I was sick with strep throat on that like Thursday and Friday while I wasn't feeling sick anymore, but I still couldn't go to school because I was still contagious after I started taking the antibiotics, and I was just playing the same couple games on PopCap.
Oh,
Like,
PopCap.
or sorry, it was on Nitrome. It was on
Oh,
nitrome.com.
Nitro.
Um, and just playing like pixel games on Nitrome while listening to the album on repeat, and especially those episodes because they're at the beginning while I was like in my bed in the dark.
I remember like 18 different instances of different things I was doing while listening to Gloobers while laying on the ground in my bedroom while playing with like my dolls.
You're like the ultimate self where you can see all the different timelines of when you were listening to
Yeah.
all merged in your mind.
It's
Anyways,
like it's like the opening of KH3 where there's just like all the like the memory windows around Sora and he's
mhm.
just seeing all the different experiences from his life, but it's just me listening to Gloobers like 1800 times. um, yeah, I'm the ultimate Wellington fan and the ultimate Gloobers fan, and those are two things to be profoundly ashamed of, yet I am not. And I think that makes me the bravest individual that's ever walked this planet.
The two most uncontested positions you hold.
I have what no one else on this earth wants.
You have what no one else has because they don't want it.
Okay,
So what happens in Protector?
um so well oh my gosh,
Mhm.
Wyatt, one of the W names. Wyatt wants to protect people, and so he starts seeking out people he can protect. There's been some bear attacks going on in Odyssey, or just like bears
bear sightings,
rummaging through things and grabbing garbage, and felt very small towny to me. Like, yeah, that's a
very
problem.
like our backyard. Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently it's like really bad in Janelle, from what I've heard. Like, there's a lot of bears there that get into people's backyards. So Wyatt starts basically scoping out Wits End to make sure that he can like protect people at Wits End. And then they said Wyatt's age in this episode, which I don't know if they've said before. They maybe have.
Probably not.
How old did you write it down? How old Connie said? She said like 9 or 10 or 11
Probably,
or something
I'm
like
gonna
that.
guess 10.
Yeah, he was younger than I thought he was. I thought he was older than that. I don't know why.
No, for the younger side, that's usually right. Like the pretty standard is like 10 to 12.
Yeah, no, I was thinking more like 12 or something like that.
No, Wyatt's always
10.
struck me as the younger end of things.
That's
I was
true.
surprised that Bridget was like talking about like driving her car, but then also, I mean, she is also working, so like,
Yeah, she'd have to be older.
yeah, and I think you do need to be 16 in the US, right, to work if it's not like a family business.
I think so. So let's say Bridget is
Probably 16.
tentatively 16, if not 17.
I doubt 17.
Probably not 17, but I will leave some leeway in there. I'm going to assume 16. So Wyatt's looking for people to protect. He kind of latches onto Connie.
Well, because he knows the bear was near Wits End. It was seen by the dumpsters.
And Connie notices this in both comedic and slightly
Cringy.
a little bit creepy, cringy fashion, which made me kind of uncomfortable, but it was also really funny at certain other moments.
It was uncomfortable in Connie's perspective. It's funny because, you know, we had the like dramatic irony of knowing what was actually going on.
Yeah.
To recontextualize.
So basically Connie thinks that Wyatt is like hovering around her to protect her because he has a crush on her. And there's like a moment where she's just like, why does this always happen to me? And then another bit which made me laugh really hard because I was just really uncomfortable and stuff with that, even though I was just like, okay, that's kind of, I think it's understandable that Connie would think that. And then Wyatt has this conversation with Connie where it's just like, yeah, this just really isn't working out, I don't think. And then
he goes off on a whole thing because
he goes off on a tangent, which
Bridget
I don't know how it didn't sound romantic to Wyatt, but Wyatt's very oblivious.
Bridget was getting annoyed with Wyatt talking about the Protector stuff, so she told him that if he's a superhero, he needs to have a secret identity and not tell people about it so that he would stop annoying her with it and being weird to everyone else about it.
Mm-hmm.
But that meant that he felt the need to vag about it to everyone, resulting in the miscommunication of going on a whole thing to Connie about like, oh, you know my secret, and you know sometimes I just think I'll get caught up in this. I'll lose my own identity because I've become so like, who am I anymore if I've been like dissolved in the caught up of this is my identity now and I don't even know who I am anymore.
And Connie thinks that
Connie's like
identifying his new identities just become the fact that he has a crush on Connie. And then he has a line just like, I've heard that this doesn't work for other people. And Connie's like,
they just lose themselves in it. She was like, wait, yeah, just like my other... Wait, who have you been talking to?
That made me laugh so hard, honestly. Connie's just like rattling off a list. It's like, let me think, like Mitch, Jimmy, maybe, because Jimmy is just... It's the same scenario, basically, with
for
what
one
happened
episode,
with Jimmy
yeah.
and Connie and Jeff, and it was so funny. Somehow...
Did he go into the imagination station?
Yeah, I was going to say somehow he got into the imagination station, was just talking to
Judah.
What's his face? Yeah, to Judah. My fan came on. I don't know if it's really loud for you.
I didn't notice.
Okay, I guess it's just loud for me.
Yeah, so that was the highlight of the episode for me, and then things kind of.
That was a highlight for you, not
No, I
everything with
said
Bridget?
a highlight, like of
Oh,
Wyatt's
okay.
side.
I'm
Of
gonna put
Wyatt.
both earbuds in so I can't hear the fan as much anymore. There we go.
Um, yeah, that was my favorite part of Wyatt's side of the story, and then the storylines kind of intersect together.
So
So we should
basically,
talk
what's
about
happening with
Bridget's
Bridget
side.
is the B plot, where their mom, whose name I always forget,
Um, I'll just check.
so she's wants to like spend more time with Bridget, but Bridget's been
In
like
playlist,
very
Carla.
Carla, yeah. But Bridget's been like very closed off and stuff, and Carla can't really figure out why. So she's kind of worried that she like might be losing Bridget, and then she brings up the whole like drowning incident again, which was very surprising because just like, oh, we're gonna do all the continuity between the last episode.
Which, I
That's
mean,
neat.
they already were in as much as that's what Wyatt's stuff was building off of, so I
Yeah, but
wasn't
they
as
like that
surprised.
was the moment where you realize like, oh, they're really like diving
Yeah,
into
yeah, yeah.
Bridget's
Diving
resulting
in.
trauma. And that's not what I meant. Oh no, Bridget. Oh no.
Yeah, and she
Um,
specifically, she thinks that Bridget is withdrawn from her and resents her because she allowed Bridget to get back into the pool at
which
the
I was
end.
just kind of sitting there like, oh,
And that surprised me that it
this
wasn't
is
just like
heavy.
referencing this happened, but like referencing like, oh, Bridget shouldn't have done that, and Carla blames herself for having let that happen as her mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh wow, I didn't really think that we kind of dig into
Yeah,
things
we
as much as
like
that.
really got into the thick of it, boys.
And Ron is just like, please stop calling me, like I'm gonna get in trouble.
Yeah, the dad. And they realize like Bridget starts she's acting like progressively weirder and weirder as the episode goes on. She starts like looking a lot more like bedraggled.
And it didn't seem cohesive at first, like until
Yeah,
they put it
it
all
felt like
together.
really
It was just like all this weird, uncharacteristic behavior, but there didn't seem to be a common theme to
and
it.
like avoiding people and just
like I thought it was just general like depression, like, oh, I don't want to go out and I'm not like looking after myself and I'm just like don't want to talk to people.
And I didn't really know where they were going with that for a very long time, and I didn't know if they would be like, oh yeah, it's just because of this mundane reason everything is fine, and then just not really address anything and the episode ends. But no, it was that like she hasn't been going and washing at all because touching water freaks her out now, so she doesn't want to like go out in public because like she looks so unkempt, and she's like,
she has a fear now. She gets triggered every time she gets water on her face,
which is completely understandable.
Yeah.
And then just all these other things that just like slowly build up to the point where you find out like why she's been doing all of it, and you're like, oh, that clicks everything into place. And I think I didn't cry during this episode, but I came very close with the ending. And Devin was talking about like how the last episode just like really hit him at where he was when he listened to it, and this one really hit me when I was running around very lost while playing Kingdom Hearts in a place emotionally and mentally that I didn't anticipate because of things I won't get into that happened to me about a month prior to listening to this episode. And yeah, you know that like thing that's just like God provides like certain messages for you like when you need them and stuff like that. That really hit me with this one. I feel like it hit you with the last one a little bit.
And I never would have thought about it for you like until you mentioned it, and I was like, that makes a lot of sense.
I talked to Devin about it off camera like a week ago, a little bit.
So as Bridget's story's building up, and like it's mostly Carla's perspective as she's trying to like figure out like, I'm losing my daughter and like she won't talk to me, is this just normal teenage stuff, I don't understand her anymore, we're losing connection, and she's trying to fix things, and they get into like an argument about it at wit's end, and Connie notices it, and so she talks to Wyatt and tries to redirect his efforts to be like, you know, I thank you for trying to protect me from a potential bear attack, but I think that, like, helping your mom and your sister is, like, a lot more practical of somewhere that you could be trying to focus your efforts right now.
And they did, like, this thing I really love where it's like they figured out a way to, like, address Bridget's trauma and help her in a way that was, like, best suited for where she was.
Yeah, I
And
have
it
a
was
lot to say about that.
good. It was so good. I figured that was the thing you were going to talk about a lot.
And Wyatt figures it out. Like, he's like, okay, I'm going to walk with you, Bridget. And then she gets hit by a sprinkler and she starts freaking out. And he, like, you know, he's paying attention to things. He puts the pieces together. He talks to her about it. She talks back. And then he talks to her mom.
Wyatt is so emotionally intelligent when he's, like, actively, like, paying attention to whatever's going on, especially when it has to do with Bridget. They're so good. I love Wyatt and Bridget as, like, a sibling duo in Odyssey so much because they're, like, so unique as a,
I think one of the best
just
written,
as a
like,
duo.
sibling relationships in terms of, like, siblings.
Yeah, because, like, they have moments where, like, they bicker and stuff like that, but they just, like, understand each other on a fundamental level that, like, none of the other characters in Odyssey do.
Very in tune with their ability to pick up on what's going on with each other and, like, so picking on each other, but ruthlessly defending each other from others in a way that, like, I think is shown better with them than most other siblings that we've seen as, like, main characters.
Honestly, I think it's the best we've seen in all of Odyssey, in my opinion, that I can think of at the moment. Because, like, Bridget comes in and then she hears from Connie for, like, 10 seconds about how Wyatt's been acting. And she's like, oh, yeah, he's probably doing this and this and this and this. And these are the reasonings. And this is how you should react. And just all this information that she got from, like, barely any details with Connie. She was able to just, like, give this wealth of information about, like, Wyatt. And then Wyatt just, like, immediately could do the same thing mentally when Bridget got hit with the sprinkler. And it's just like, they're so good. I love them so much.
So that happens, and then the bear is also in the dumpster, and Wyatt's death trap of a backpack with the pepper spray that exploded on Connie and Carla and Bridget and Wyatt. And then between that, when they go to throw it out, and the air horn that is stuck going off, and that scares the bear away and ends up protecting Connie.
I was going to say a thing, but I totally forgot what it was. Okay. Oh yeah, when they were talking about, like, all these weird things with Bridget, and then it was just like, and now my pepper spray's gone. I thought it was going to be like Bridget took the pepper spray because she was, I don't even know what I was trying to figure out.
Wyatt already talked about pepper spray. Or did you think that was a red herring?
I thought it was like a red herring or something like that. And that, like, Bridget was actually going to have it. And it was going to be, like, a twist that Bridget had it because she was, like, sneaking out with friends or, like, getting involved in something weird to, like, try and, like, push back and ignore and distract herself from, like, the trauma that she went through. And, like, she took it just to, like, protect herself from whatever she was getting involved in.
It's not an uncommon response to trauma like that.
Yeah, and then I was so relieved when I found out that, like, Wyatt had it. And then I was overtaken by fear because I was just like, Wyatt has it. Oh no, it's gonna happen.
So, yeah. For my notes, when Wyatt was doing his protector instinct thing and he was with Bridget and they see a woman trying to cross the street and he's like, ma'am, he's like, come on, Bridget.
Oh my gosh, I was cringing so hard during
We need to help this old woman. She's like,
dying.
She says, old woman, I'm 48. And he says, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Bridget, she's going to need both of our help to cross the street.
I was losing my mind. Oh my gosh. And Bridget was like, Wyatt, no.
Oh, that was a really good line. Also, I liked how the crosswalk sound that it the noise that it made. I was like, hey, that's the actual crosswalk sound.
Good job, Foley department.
Well, I don't know. They live a long ways away. Maybe crosswalks don't sound like that over there. I don't know.
Crosswalks don't sound like that in these here parts.
I don't know. It stuck out to me like that.
I don't remember how it sounded. Was it like the chirping bird?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Or like the beep boop,
Yeah.
one of those two. Yeah, the stuff with Connie, it was so funny to me because it makes so much sense for being like, well, it looks like another kid's got a crush on me. Gotta stop being so adorable. Like Mabel Pine's kind of line. Like, I imagine that would be one of the worst problems of being a young single woman working at wit's end. Like, it would be happening constantly with all these kids around, like, in that age range. Like, just having to deal with that all the time of just trying to, like, rebuff them.
I was like, hey, can I have your sign? And she's like, no, and then walks away.
Yeah, stop sign. Yeah, that whole conversation was so well written of like Wyatt having this crisis of like being a comic book superhero and how does that affect my identity, and Connie like feeling like really insulted by like Wyatt talking about his identity fading into the embers by being in a relationship with her, and she's like, and then Connie's like, Bridget, I need your help, and she was like, because of my power of bluntly crushing people, and Connie's like, yes. And I really loved Connie like bluntly being like, Bridget, I do need your help, and yes, I am saying it because you're really good at being blunt and mean to people. Please help me. And Bridget's like, I can do that.
I love Bridget so much.
So yeah, the ending was so beautiful, and like you said, the thing, and it wasn't, I think it was in my mind, but it wasn't like, oh, this is a thing I need to write about and write a lot about, until I think I finished listening to the episode for the second time, or maybe even after that. But
for the second time, did you listen to it? Was it after me and you talked, or?
I think so.
Okay. Did that impact your
maybe? I don't know.
listening experience at all? I will say I'm doing a lot better.
I don't
now,
think so.
Since then.
That is very good.
Yeah.
The thing that I liked the most about this episode is that it does a really, really good job in general, especially for what I would expect from this show, about addressing triggers and how they work and how to deal with them. Mm-hmm. Because lots of people after traumatic experience obviously may have triggers related to like, you know, some super scary thing, like that could be like someone talking about drowning or being assaulted or the sound of gunfire after coming back from war, like things that are very obviously like traumatic in the way that happened to them. And so of course that's going to trigger you. I have a friend who like got hit by a car and it was like a whole thing that took them years to heal from, and now they can't watch like movies that have like violent car crashes in them.
Wait, do I know?
Yeah.
Who?
Well, we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But a lot of things that get overlooked more are like a lot less common triggers that people can get from things, or things that can be associated with like how they got it. Because you know, we have such strong sense memory things. Like we were just talking about how closely we associate episodes with what we were doing while it was happening. And
see, for me, it's always being in the same location as wherever the like traumatic event took place. So like when I injured myself in grade 8, mm-hmm. It was like it was like a year or something like that before I could go back into the woodshop room. And when I did, I was like shaking, like my legs were really wobbly and stuff, and I couldn't be comfortable with going back in there.
Very bad contextually.
Yeah, it is. And then I couldn't be comfortable in that room anymore until I was in grade 12, and even then I just like am kind of uneasy about that place.
It's very reasonable. I'm glad that didn't carry into the metal shop at least.
Me too. I don't know why it only affected me in the one room and not the other, even though they're
I'm glad it
very
was a very
similar
like,
spaces.
I guess like a visceral thing instead of like a logical thing, because logically you should have felt equally about both of them, but you didn't have that
Yeah.
visceral connection, which is good
I
because you
think it's
took
just because
several
I have
years
like
of.
such positive memories
Yeah.
of just being in the metal shop and spending time there. And then like with what happened here, it's like the same thing, but fortunately like the wall was fixed, the holes in the wall, and I think that really helped because when
Not
I
having the
was
visual, yeah.
yeah, when I was coming back here, I was like actively dreading seeing like the holes. But when I came here, one of the first things I did after putting it off for several hours was go into that room,
I think you've
and then
created you've created such a
I
bizarre
yeah,
vague dance around what happens.
yeah, yeah. Basically, like I went in and it was all drywalled up, and like the relief that I felt.
From
Basically,
from the context you've given to the viewers, I
I made
think
it sound like
what
something very
what
bad
I would
happened, like more
imagine
negative than
is
what actually
holes in the
happened.
drywall because someone Jack Nicholsoned like through the
No,
wall.
I something happened and I did something dumb where I hurt myself accidentally, and then I crashed into the wall and put dents in it and passed out and had to go to emergency, and it wasn't good, but I'm doing a lot better now.
So, like I was saying, unusual triggers, it could be um, something small like the feeling of water on your face or the smell of the cologne worn by the person who hurt you. I've heard someone talking about like being assaulted by a significant other who's like repetitively abusive, and then in the morning they would make breakfast for that person, and so like the smell of someone making like pancakes and bacon and stuff was like a trigger for them of being assaulted. Since memories are so strong in the way they tie you back to that moment, this is a really good example of an atypical trigger, because these are the kinds of things that people are most likely to dismiss, and they're not going to like be worried about or thinking about. Like they're going to say like, oh, I don't want to make jokes about drowning because Bridget's here, but they're not going to think about like something that might involve like a bit of water splashing on your face. It's the kind of thing people are going to dismiss. They'll just tell you to get over it. That phrase always comes up. They're like, this is the real world. Like, you can't live your life like this. You can't expect safe spaces or people to accommodate stuff like that. Stop being so sensitive, is a lot of the rhetoric that we hear around
I
that kind of
think
thing.
I think the best series, and as weird as it is to say, this is one of the things that the Dream SMP is praised most about, is its portrayal of mental health issues and stuff like that, which is not something you would expect going into it. But this is like a role play series online, and like basically there's this arc where Tommy was heavily abused, his character. And then at the end of the last season, which ended on January 20th, when him and his best friend were going out to like fight the guy who'd been abusing him, he like listed all of his triggers on the way when they were just like talking and stuff like that. He's like, yeah, things that still like bother me is like when he's nice to me is way worse than when he's mean to me, because I still kind of fall for it. When I see, he says, like, when I see lava, and like, that was the big thing with after that arc ended. Everyone was really worried that like his trauma would just kind of disappear, because media has a really bad issue of just
Mm-hmm.
like showing like this character's traumatized and never doing anything about it. But like, literally every single stream, pretty much, for the past like 2 or 3 months, like the trauma that that character has experienced has manifested like at least once, if not several times, like every single stream. And the acting is very impressive because it's being done by a 16-year-old, and he keeps like very very good track of like what his character's triggers are, and like just moving the camera around or like physically acting or breathing or just speaking in ways that just like show the extent of either like the trauma he suffered or how much he's like started to heal since he went through his trauma, and it's honestly really impressive.
Um, So as you mentioned, the approach that this episode takes is perfect because it ties back to exactly what I was just saying about people always say, like, you can't expect in the real world, people aren't going to put trigger warnings on your content in real life, not like, movies have some kind of rating system that tells you what kind of like violence or language or sexual content they may contain,
It's not like
or that TV shows have that, or that music has that, or that video
tons of
games have
Goodread
that.
authors put like trigger warnings before their book descriptions.
Yeah, I love
which
it when
is
people
always
are like, in
nice.
real life, you can't expect like pieces of media to warn you about the things in them, when every piece of main media has some kind of rating content system that gives you a general rating and a breakdown of the content in it.
Yeah, basically every piece of media does it, more or less.
Yeah, it's almost like we have
So
whole like the MPAA and all other like giant organizations, the ESRB, that are dedicated to
Hays
maintaining these
Code. The Hays Code
these
just
rating
pops its head
systems.
in, and then I shove it out the window and like, get out of here, Hays Code.
Um, Anyways, the perfect approach, and that Bridget is going to go back to therapy, and I hope that with time she's going to be able to have water on her face without it triggering her PTSD. But in the meantime, she has people around her who care for her enough to help her find ways to get through life while taking care to avoid that trigger, even if it means like doing something in a weird or like a not a normal way, like taking the extra effort to have someone wash your hair for you in the sink. And that's what I really like. It made me think about this post that talks about like sometimes you have to go out of your way to help someone who's triggered by something that's in everyday life, and like that's what love is. That's what your friends and family are for, and it shows us in this episode it's okay to come up with a weird or abnormal solution to work around a trigger like this. And the post talked about like when it comes to triggers and PTSD or other mental illnesses or neurodivergencies, things like OCD or ADHD that can affect the way that you perform tasks normally, that obstruct you from performing tasks normally in a lot of like the usual ways. A lot of people will just tend to avoid something altogether because they're like, I can't do it the normal way, so I just won't do it because I want to seem normal. And you don't want to entertain a more contrived way of doing things because it feels weird. But it's okay to do things differently. If you have OCD and every time you leave the house you're consumed with fears of that you left the oven on and you can't think of anything else until you go home, take a picture of the oven being off every time before you leave the house. And then if you're worried about it, you can check your phone and you have proof at the timestamp that shows the oven is off. Things like that. If you're autistic and it prevents you from talking on the phone at all, and your favorite restaurant only takes orders over the phone, then find a friend who's willing to get a text order from you every time you want food, and then they can make that phone call from you if you want to dine there and order it to your house. Like, it's more inconvenient, but it's more convenient than having to go home every time or just not eating food. So it can
Yeah.
feel hard sometimes to like ask someone for accommodations, but don't be afraid to do things a different way if that's what it takes to get through life. And there are people in your life who are willing to help you find creative ways to work around doing something if that's what it takes to get you through it. If you have PTSD triggered by water in your face, it prevents you from showering, find a loved one who's willing to give you a salon-style hair wash in the sink every time you need to wash your hair, and then go and take a bath and wash from the neck down. It's not the normal ways to do things, and that's fine. You're allowed to find weird ways to work around your triggers or live with your brain as it is if that's what it takes for you to function, because that's better than just not functioning at all. And this episode expresses that really, really, really well, especially considering that it's like the B plot for the episode. And so that really impressed me.
Yeah, it's like how people say, like, if you need something like as a basic, like, fundamental need in order to just like survive the way you need to,
Mm-hmm.
like, get that need basically. Like, you don't go out when it's -40 without a coat or something like that. Like, you supply yourself with things that you need to look after yourself.
Yeah, the original post, it was someone like expressing something that their therapist had shared to them that was to all of this effect. And I couldn't remember what the examples they gave were, but it was basically like, I can't do this thing that I need to do because every time I can only do it in like this weird way, or I have to do this other thing. And the therapist was like, okay, then do that. And they're like, but like, that's not how you do it. That's not how people do it. And they're like, okay, but that doesn't mean you can't do it like that. If that's what it takes for you to do it, then do that. You don't have to do things like everyone else does. If that's what it takes for you to function, then do that.
So this episode was really, really good. I'm going to give it 5 stars. Just, it honestly touched on everything Bridget's going through in such a beautiful way. And I feel like the fact that her dad is a soldier and probably does have like PTSD and stuff like that too, really helps probably, or will be helpful in like how Carla goes about like dealing with all of this and helping Bridget. So she's definitely in good hands.
Yeah. And I'll cover more of the album overall theme stuff that I was talking about when we get to the album review. I think I didn't notice it the first time I listened to the episode because I was doing other stuff. I didn't pick up on like why the pepper spray was exploding inside the backpack, and I thought it was funny on the second time through once realizing that like because the air horn was stuck going off inside the backpack and the zipper was stuck, and so Bridget's like, I've got this, and she just starts violently stomping and crushing the entire backpack with her foot until the air horn stops, which is then what caused the pepper spray to explode because she was just stomping on the entire backpack as hard as she could and crushed the other contents, causing an aerosolized pepper spray can to explode inside of it.
She basically made a pepper spray bomb.
Yeah. I think I'm going to have to give it 5 out of 5 too, just because it did such a phenomenal job of expressing a very difficult and complex topic in a very
Marshall,
good way.
You done good. I don't know why I've just
to kill it with the Perkins.
I've just started this like habit of just picking on the writers, but like in a positive way, like positive bullying. I guess that's just appreciating all of this. Yeah, that's what normal humans call it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, let's go with that word. That's, yeah. Devin, I'm a Wellington fan. What do I know of the word complimenting? I only know it when it applies to Wellington.
I live in a world of sassy and underhanded comebacks.
I live in a world where we call it positive bullying because I'm just thinking about Wellington. Got Wellington on the brain. Speaking of Wellington, the miraculous Office AIOO released another episode.
I watched it this morning.
Yesterday. I get such Wellington vibes from Felix. I love it. I think that's why I like Felix so much. Because I just like all these awful characters who are secretly soft.
Okay, we need to talk about the finale now.
Yes.
So let's call the whole thing off. So it's time for the album 70 finale, episode 909. Let's call the whole thing off, written by Bob Hoose. What happens?
I almost made this joke earlier. Whoa, I'm hitting things. When you were like, okay, now let's call the whole thing off. I almost said, but we're almost... I was like, but this is our 200th episode. You want to call it quits now?
I thought you were just going to hang up the call, but you wouldn't because we know what happens.
No, I'm not doing that again. After last time, which was very funny, but at the time, but not funny in retrospect.
Yes.
So I won't do that again.
It was still funny as a one-off thing that neither of us are going to repeat.
Yes. It was funny since we're never going to do it again.
Yeah.
So we finally got our Rydell Emily episode.
And Yay! We've confirmed things are only just beginning.
Yes. So Emily is not going anytime soon.
And neither are the Rydells.
I am so happy about this.
Because we were honestly. Like, they have to show up at least one more time, but that might be basically the end of it now. And the end of this, they're basically like, here we go, starting off on a whole new thing.
I'm so excited. They're just like, here we go, Arc 2. And I'm like, yes, the music, Arc 2.
The music was like Portal elevator music, kind of like do 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 do, or like the music in BioShock Infinite. Like. It was very kind of like tech futuristic mystery, but like with a growing air of like excitement and confusion. It had a very sci-fi feel to it.
We got some teachers back that we haven't seen in a long time in this episode, both in voice and in mention, which was nice. So this episode starts off in detention with the Rydell's and Emily there, and some others.
Some other who cares. Some other very funny who cares.
So basically all of their phones were going off and stuff during class. And
well, their phones weren't going off.
Their phones. And so they were put in detention and their phones were confiscated. And they're like, those were not our phones. And then everyone in class was just like, yeah, and we don't want to be here either and stuff. And they're like, shut up, you're not helping. Those actually aren't our phones. I swear, I fell. I sprained my...
I adore the one kid who, like, Miss Adelaide keeps on... They're like, we wouldn't make this up. Like, who would come up with this? And she keeps turning back to the same kid. And she was like, so what do you think? He's like, I think that aliens did it.
It felt so, like, Adventure Zone-y, honestly. Like,
it sounded like something Old Man McGucket would yell.
Like when the brothers are like doing a scene or something like that, but they roll bad, and then none of the NPCs take them seriously, and then the other brothers just start like adding stuff in the background, and they're like, "Shut up, you're not helping."
The bell ringing
scene, yeah, in Dust. Are we still meeting for the potluck? Yes, we are. Can we ring the bell if our in-laws come and we don't want to talk? No, you can't.
Is that a bell ringing emergency, Errol?
Oh, I love Dust. I love Dust so much. I'm so glad that Travis got to be the DM for Arc. I love Graduation.
I would love a full Dust thing.
I would adore a full Dust arc.
The theme song is so good.
I really wanted season 2 of Taz to be Dust. But it wasn't. But we got Graduation. I feel like it worked out because we got Graduation. I would love more Dust, though.
Anyways.
I'm not over the fact that we've gotten so much Honey Heist continuation and no Dust continuation.
I need to re-listen to Honey Heist before the live show.
That's on the 19th, right?
That is on Friday, this coming Friday.
Okay. So... in this episode, they are in detention.
Yes. And
they say it's not their phones. And they start trying to figure out, like, whose phones they are, why these phones would be planted on them.
I really loved how much Miss Adelaide was not believing them. She's like, I do not want to be here. I do not want to have this from you two. I just, there's anywhere else in the world I would rather be right now than dealing with all of you.
You know what else I liked? The fact that Emily was the exact same way for the entire episode. This is the dynamic I wanted. This is exactly what I wanted from these three. It's just Suzu and Mori being like, yes, let's do this. And Emily's just like, no. And then they're just dragging her
It was funny to me how, because like, it's weird to think that Miss Adelaide and most of the town has no idea what went on.
Yeah.
And so Emily's like, you don't understand, like, how much I don't want this to be happening. And Miss Adelaide's like, I don't care what's going on here. And she's like, literally, like, you cannot imagine what is happening to me right now. The things I've gone through. And Miss Adelaide's like, yeah, you and me both, sister.
It was so good. And there were so many amazing moments where Suzu did something incredibly illegal, and then Emily's, like, freaking out, and then Maury's just like, oh, don't worry, we've done a million things like this, and she's like, what do you mean you've done a million things?
Me thinking about the, like, we stole Suzu, we didn't steal Suzu's account, she's adopted, and she's like, I want to steal.
Did I make that joke?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a joke I would make. I barely.
Suzu's adopted.
Right.
We didn't steal Suzu. She's
Suzu's
adopted.
like, I want to steal. Like, you guys are bonkers. Is basically their dynamic.
Yeah.
And it's so good. It's so good. And
just that when us because I built up to the joke of like Suzu being like, I want to steal, and then you were the one who added in like, but we stole Suzu. We didn't steal Suzu. She's adopted. Absolutely broke me the first time you said that.
I remember that now. Yeah, I did rewatch our Rydell Revelations review, I think, because I really enjoyed that one. That was fun.
Yeah.
So
we went on a journey in that review.
Yeah, we did.
We were not expecting Tasha Forbes to show up.
Several journeys during that review. Some upward, some downward, some backward, and some forward. Lots with wit. I kind of wanted the first Mori and Suzu episode to have wit.
But Emily talked... Oh, we'll talk about it later, but Emily talked about how she doesn't trust wit anymore. Yeah. And I really appreciated it.
I liked that a lot.
I was really impressed with that. Anyway, okay, what happens in the episode?
So they're trying to figure out, like, why their phones were swapped and stolen, and they find out they were given, like, certain professors' phones and, like, the principals and stuff. I just straight up realized this morning I don't call them teachers anymore. I call them professors.
I did think that was weird when you said that.
University and college
especially
for 10
since
million years.
Only one of them is, or none of them are really that we know of per se. Like it was the principal, the vice principal, and the secretary.
Yeah. And they were all like, all of those three were all sent like texts that said like, go to this place, or messages.
Different places, different
times.
Like,
go to this place, I found your phone so you can get it. So they're all like very far away from the office. And Mori, Suzu, and Emily find this out through a series of breakings in to rooms
and hacking computers.
And hacking computers when they were supposed to just go to the principals and ask him a question and then walk back to detention. And Emily's just like, we're gonna get in so much trouble. And she's basically become like his name's Arnold, right? From like Magic School Bus. Yeah.
I knew I should have stayed home today.
It's just like, I knew I shouldn't have gone with you too. And then they're just like, come on.
I really like, though, the character development of, at the end, when Emily puts it together and she realizes that Jay's in the cabinet, that she was like, Suzu, if you would do the honors, and ask Suzu to go and pick the lock to the principal's, like, confiscatory cabinet. And I was like, look at this character development. Now she's asking Suzu to pick locks for her. I'm so proud of Emily.
Like, I know Suzu and Mori aren't gonna stop doing crimes, so I might as well have them do crimes in a productive manner.
Which is exactly what they said to her.
Yeah.
So they're
like,
I was
we're
like,
just gonna keep on being dirty crime boys, but like through you, we can be dirty crime boys with a positive influence on the world.
Yeah.
Which I love. And Jay was in this episode, which was really funny because I listened to these 2 episodes right after our last episode reviews.
I was talking about Elvis.
We were talking about Jay, and we were just like, there was so much good Jay in this episode. It was like old Jay. The only thing that was missing was Elvis. And I was listening to this episode while I was getting ready for bed and like washing my face and taking off my makeup and stuff in the bathroom. And then Elvis was mentioned, and then I did a little happy spin dance in the bathroom because I was so excited. I was jumping up and down, and I was like, yes, Elvis!
Yeah,
yes!
When I heard that after a review, I was like, well, son of a gun, there you go.
I was so happy, Devin. I was so happy. Who wrote this episode again?
Bob Hoose.
Is he...
one of the less common writers, because he's a sound designer normally.
Yeah, because he... Is he the one who always makes himself like a ship captain?
It's Bob Smithhauser.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So not one of my J writers, but got the Elvis in there anyway. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was so happy about that. He was just like, I want these old mint J records in a flashback, because Suzu, I think, saw him earlier, and I kind of realized that Suzu and Jay haven't really interacted before, which I'd never realized before.
Best line of the episode is when Suzu tells that story, and then what does Mori says? He was like, I love that Jay. He's a hoot.
Maury said that, and I was just like, yes, Maury. Maury's just like, man,
I think he said,
love
quote,
Jay, and I was like, I love Jay
he said,
too.
quote, that kid's a hoot, and I was like, I love this.
I just, it made me realize how badly I need a Maury J episode. But at the same time, I'm like, no, the world would be destroyed. It would end so badly.
I like when,
for humanity.
because Miss Adelaide doesn't know about, like, all the Rydell stuff, when they're like, no, Miss Adelaide, you have to listen. Someone's framing us because they wanted us out of the way for something. And she was like, why would they do that? And she's like, because Emily and Suzu were the best two detectives in the school. And she was like, and Maury's like, I am very supportive of my sister.
I love Maury so much. I know I said this, like, in the Rydell Revelations review, but, like, never in any of my years, where's the sentence going, did I think that I would love Maury as much as I did, like, as much as I currently do, if I, like, went and talked to my past self when we were in the G house, talking about him falling out of windows and being evil, like a tiny little Joker
impression, yeah.
Yeah. If I went up to myself and was just like, Maury's going to become one of your favorite kid characters, I would straight up not believe
What would be more unbelievable to you if you went back in time to that moment?
Or you said, like, Wit adopts them?
No, if you said that, how much you'd like Maury, if you told yourself what year that arc would finally conclude.
Oh, I don't think I believe... Okay, I would sooner believe how much I like Maury than how long it took for the arc to conclude.
Okay, so what happens next in the story? They realize that all the people were purposefully drawn away from the office at the same time.
And that there must be something, like, in the office that someone was trying to get.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're trying to reflect on, like, people they've seen who have acted weird that day. Maury, or Suzu says she saw Jay acting weird, but at the same time they're just like, but Jay is very weird, so we don't know if he's necessarily involved.
Jay is always a confounding variable in mysteries.
And it's so funny because I feel like he's 75% of the time, whenever something weird's going on and Jay's in the episode, he's, like, one of the causes for the thing going wrong, but there's, like, this solid 25% of the time where he's just not involved.
And also Jay's there.
Involved, and then it just becomes, and also Jay's there, and he's just like, this is a weird thing that's going on, and I love it when that happens. So Buck and Jules, I guess, don't go to...
No, because this is the middle school, and they're at the high school.
Which I never realized they all went to different schools. I thought that, like, Jay,
well, because they're older,
would have been at the same school. But, like, something that belongs to Jules.
It is weird now that you mention it that Jay was, like, at the high school selling football merch when he goes to the middle school. I assume they're nearby.
Jay's strange. So basically, for some reason, Jules's diary was confiscated, and she really wants to get it back. I don't blame her. It went very badly last time that happened. For some reason, the middle school principal has it.
She was in the parking lot, and she dropped it, and he found it.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So it's in his office, but she wants it back, but she's embarrassed.
They said, like, there was some incriminating stuff in it, so I assume it's probably a bunch of, like, embarrassing feelsy stuff that she doesn't want tied to her. I don't think it's actual criminal activity stuff, but yeah. She was like,
that's what I think too, but at the same time, she still could have just been like, hey, that's my book, can I have it back?
Definitely
but she didn't want people to know it was hers because she was embarrassed because she's Jules, and she's like that. I love you, Jules.
It's definitely, it's one of those situations where it's like...
It's like an in-character thing for
where
her.
it's like, if Jules had realized how complex this had become at the end, she would have just asked for it because that would have been easier.
Probably.
But at the beginning of it, it seemed easier to do it this way before everything spiraled out of control.
It seems easier for her.
It's like a white lie kind of situation.
Bribe Jay to break in and steal back the notebook by saying if he does, she'll give him an Elvis record, which I don't know why she has the Elvis record in the first place. And then Jay gets trapped inside, and then she has to text. No, and then Jay texts Buck to break him out of the locker. And then when all this stuff was going down,
It was way
Buck
more complex than I was expecting.
Yeah. When all this stuff is going down and like the Rydell's and Emily are just like figuring all this stuff out, and then Buck appears, I was just like, Buck, no!
Me too.
This is the second time in this album.
Like, in all caps, Buck, no, stop this, please. I was like, yeah, multiple times this album, Buck, you have to stop being like, oh, actually, I am doing the bad thing.
I was just like, well, on the bright side, even though Jules was mentioned, Buck isn't involved at all, and he is entirely innocent if any officers happen to ask. And then it was just like, actually, no, Buck is here now. And I was like, Buck, stop, please. So
I like how they were like, we knew you were involved because like, and Jules was involved because only you would be able to pull something off like this successfully. And the only way that you would do something so foolhardy is if Jules asked you to do it.
Which is true.
It is true.
It's like the opposite of the impulse control. I cut my sleeves. It's just like, Buck, why did you cut your sleeves off your shirt? And he's
because
like,
Jules is here and
to.
she's negative 75% of my impulse control. She removed 75% of my impulse control.
Yeah.
And then they get in detention because Miss Adelaide finally arrives, and so the Rydells and Emily.
Buck is just like, can't put me in detention. I don't go to the school, and then he walks away, which was legendary. Yeah, he just kind of like finger guns away and leaves the building, and I was like, oh, Buck, I love you.
King behavior.
Did they mention something about Katrina though?
No. Well, because they were like, why would Buck be here? And they're like, well, Katrina does teach here.
They're like, oh yeah, his mom teaches here. And I was just like, yeah, they're family. I'm never going to get over Eugene and Katrina and Buck and Sparky. And no, I'm not going to make a joke about Sparky. Okay.
But how's the episode end?
So, Emily kind of confronts Suzu and Mori.
Kind of confronts them.
We solved the mystery. So, we didn't, these weren't our phones. We get to be out of detention. And Miss Adelaide's like, you broke into the principal's vault, and you hacked his computer, and you did all these other things. Go get the sticks, you're on garbage duty. And they're like, aw, man. And then they go outside. And Jay's also on garbage duty. And then Maury and Suzu are like, so, mystery friends? And Emily's like, I never want to see
Emily's
you
like,
two
I'm going to
again.
go over here. And Suzu's like, I'll go with you. And she's like, I'm fine
Maury's
by
like,
myself.
And I am coming too.
And Suzu's like, no, it's fine. And Emily's like, maybe you didn't hear me. And then Emily goes off.
Emily popped off.
I was
My goodness.
I was just like playing Assassin's Creed, and that happened, and I was like, I need to pause the game and then rewind and re-listen to that.
I was fully in bed, just kind of just like sitting there, waiting for the episode to end, just staring intensely forward at my fairy lights, jaw dropped, as Emily just lays it down. She just lays down the law, and she's just like, I'm not fine. It is your fault. I have trust issues because of you. I don't even want to see or talk to Whit again because of you.
I don't want you to be here.
I don't want to be involved with you. And
does
it was
that
just
tell
like,
you how I'm feeling right
crap.
now?
And
yeah, she's like, I keep praying for
goodness.
These feelings to disappear, but they don't. They're still here. You're still here. Does that tell you what I want, Suzu? And I was like,
because I was kind of like, the whole like mystery stuff for me kind of felt like very standard kind of mystery thing. It didn't really like shock me or surprise me or anything, to the point where I was kind of like, weird that this is a season finale, but I guess that like it's because like it's these three,
Yeah.
and they've become like such a big
And I was
thing
like, something will
story-wise
happen at the
moment.
end, I guess,
And
because,
then
Emily's...
Emily just snapped at the end, and
It was great.
honestly, she kind of deserves
She
it.
absolutely deserves it.
She
And then they're like,
deserves
Wit's
it.
been talking to us about all this stuff. We want to ask something from you. And I was 100% assuming they were going to ask her to forgive them. But that was not the case.
No, it wasn't. They're like, do you want to be mystery partners? And she's like, do you want to leave my presence?
Well, they didn't even... I mean, I assume it's some sort of like, we're making a mystery group. Screw Matthew. But just the way they're
Well,
like...
Matthew doesn't want to be involved anymore.
No, I know,
so...
but I'm saying, like, forget Jones and Parker. Like, we're making the new mystery group, capital M, capital G. But we don't even know for sure it's that per se. Like, I wonder if it's a broader skill set of what they want to be doing, whatever this group is. And I'm just imagining that they're like, we're going to, like, pick up police cold cases and solve them.
I wouldn't put that past them, honestly.
Exactly. Like, I was like, there's not...
I mean, they're talented enough to do it.
There's not like definitively a limit on what kind of things they could try and do after they took down Mrs. Mado.
Yeah. They're like,
Which
we
is
have
what
the
kind of
government in our pocket. We
concerns
can
me.
do whatever we want.
We have
But
Tasha.
Tasha raised us. What do you think we're capable of?
Yeah, we have Wit and Tasha as contacts now. So from the
Wit is our dad and Tasha's our nanny. Do not mess with us.
So
And Jason's our brother. What is this? What is this?
So to go through my notes from the stop. So obviously I was very excited that we're getting more coerced time together with Emily and the Rydells. And
I feel like this is the only way they could have done it, though, because she does not want to be around them.
The question I had for probably the first half of the episode is, I'm very deeply curious who would want to do this, who would want to frame them like this, and focusing on two equally possible possibilities, because my supposition, and I don't know if you had the same thought, is that it's not about getting them out of the way for something, but rather to get them stuck together to confront the issues between them. Because I was like, it could be someone framed them because I want to do this thing, I need to get them out of the way. It could also be, I want them to make up with each other, so I'm going to do something that's going to force them into the same place in detention together, not for something else to happen, but for them to team build. Because I was like, who would want that? Wit and Matthew. I doubt Wit would come up with this scheme, but like we had the similar thing of when Maury did the same thing for Matthew and Emily with the imagination box, and he like forced Emily to confront fake Matthew to like try and solve their issues.
And also when they were in the escape room together.
Exactly, yeah.
So what I was thinking was, one, either it's like, this is actually happening, like someone actually did plant these phones on them who's like an unknown party to try and do whatever with the principal and stuff.
Yeah.
Two, Maury and Suzu planted the phones on themselves and on Emily so that they could get one-on-one time with her.
Yeah.
Three, it was either Wit or Matthew.
Yeah.
So, like, Matthew just doing all of it, or Wit convincing the teachers of the school to just go along with it because he has all teachers from literally the whole world in his back pocket.
Yeah.
At beck and call.
He used to be a teacher. He knows the secret handshake that means they have to do what he asks of them.
And also the fact that, like, my brain, Miss Adelaide, is so annoyed for the whole thing, would just be so elevated if it was just like, it's because she's helping Wit with something. It's so funny.
I would have assumed she didn't know about it. Only the teachers he took the phones from.
No, but like, think about it. If it was just like, she owed Wit a favor and she was just like, I don't like this guy.
Yeah.
And then she has to do it, and that's why she's in such a bad mood for the whole episode.
That would be
it's
very
just
funny.
Like, peak comedy to me. So yeah,
I'm glad we had the
of.
exact same thought. So I was like, could be Wit, but I don't think he would come up with the idea of like planting phones on them. Matthew, like, I don't think he would.
I didn't think Matthew would like steal or something like
I was
this.
like,
I was thinking like, if this is somehow a program like ruining their trust of reality even more, and giving them even more derealization issues, like this could be something that was programmed in part by Matthew and Wit or something like that.
The idea,
they, like, have to team build. Like, Mori and Suzu knew they were going into the program because they agreed to it or something.
But Emily, they
and
just
then
like
Emily
gassed
went
her.
in when she just thought it was like a normal imagination station program or something like that.
Emily,
and it was
they
just
like
now
put
you
a
gotta deal with
cloth
it.
over her in her sleep and put her into the station.
Oh, Emily's trust issues and Wit if she came out of the machine and it was like, Wit was like, I put you in that machine. And she'd be like, I am leaving this
don't
building.
worry, I programmed it into the imagination box and then I gave it to your parents and asked them to put it outside your bedroom door. To
Like I
invade your
said before,
dreams.
Wit straight up has like Emily's dad on speed dial at this point.
Okay,
for like
so
all the traumatizing stuff she's been through.
yeah, I was like, Wit wouldn't do this. Matthew might do it if he borrowed phones from people, but I don't know why he would do it with phones lifted from school officials instead of just random phones. So that doesn't really make sense. So it's either the likelihood is back on something more sinister, or Mori and Suzu did it because they wanted to figure out a way they could make Emily like talk to them and deal with their issues. So
I did think about the fact that it's just like, what if some government people are trying to get back at them? And I was thinking like, this is the weirdest, stupidest way.
Yeah, I was like, is it
terrorize
something
these
like,
children.
is it super big because it's a finale? It could be something crazy, but I'm like, I don't think it would play out this way if that was the case.
Yeah, exactly.
Your
like,
phone-
just kidnap them after school or something.
Whose
like
phone
that.
is this? It belongs to the President of the United States.
Like someone just puts like Poppy on a windowsill, and Maury sees it when he enters a room.
It's like-
and then someone like comes up and like chloroforms them. They're like,
Oh, it's the Chinese government who's trying to
sends
assassinate
the regards and just pulls him away.
So yeah, Miss Adelaide provisionally is like, fine, I will choose to believe you enough to let you go, because I liked how she's like, I'm gonna phone Mrs. Mays and ask about missing phones.
Who is it between the Poppy thing? Was it
Canada and China.
Canada and China? Okay. I meant to say the Canadian government, and then I realized I said the Chinese government, and I was like, wait, was that
No, because we like
the other people?
Because we like poppies.
No, I know, but it was still like screwing over the Canadian government.
Well, yeah, but it was doing it by offending the Chinese government, so they were both angry.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, but it was like framing them and stuff, so.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Canada getting back at.
Yes, that is
Maury.
a fair point. They were the ones who were framed as doing the wrong thing. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So, Miss Adelaide's like, okay, I'll call Mrs. Hughes, or Mrs. Mays. What's her number again? And Suzu's like, I know.
I was about to mention that.
And she's like, and Moore's like, she's good with numbers. Don't pay attention to that.
And then Emily's just like, how do we know that you didn't just plant that number? Let's try a different number. And Susan's like, how about this one? And starts listening, and they're like, no, we'll just...
I forgot the number. Yeah, it was a good point. I didn't think about that until Emily brought it up. Like, she could have just said any number that was matching this phone. That doesn't mean it's her phone.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and Suzu, when she started listening numbers again, where he's like, yeah. I was just like, I love these two so much. There's just some good sibling dynamics we got going in Odyssey at the moment between brother and sister. I feel like I'm more qualified to... I always feel so underqualified to comment on like sister-sister sibling pairings in like media and brother-brother. But like I feel fully qualified to talk about like sister-brother sibling dynamics, especially if it's like a younger sister and older brother.
when you don't know how much like Alex and I will talk about how much affection we have for the role of like being the eldest sibling doting on our younger sister who's like super nerdy and cool and knowledgeable about things.
Thank you.
And just like being weird together when we get to see them. Anyway, so
like
they get the number and they're
who
like,
have like their own language, and you and I have our own language, but it's just in a combination of
references to obscure media,
memes, and just plain out being weird. And no one understands what we say at any time.
So it's like the scene from Gallivant where it's just all references to other pieces of media.
Which scene in Gallivant? That's a lot of scenes in Gallivant.
Where the entire conversation is just...
No, that's not Gallivant. That's Wizards or whatever it's called. The Librarians. It's called The Librarians.
I assumed it
Yeah.
was Gallivant. I've only seen like an image set of
No,
photo set of
that's
it.
from the Librarians, which I've been meaning to either read or watch that series because it looks cool.
Anyways, they realize that the phones belong to like the principal and Mrs. Mays, and then they realize later that the other one is the vice principal. So they go to the office, and Miss Adelaide is like, "But come right back if they're not there." And then everyone's
and then they're not
gone.
there, and then they don't come back.
And then they don't come back, and Maury and Suzu are like, "But what if we did little B and Ian hacking as a treat?" And Emily's like, "Oh, okay,
You guys are bonkers.
I'll allow it." And so they do that. They hack the emails, and then they realize that people are like, someone's like, "Hey, I have your phone. It's over here. Get it this time." And then other person, "Hey, I have your phone. Get it over here at this slightly different time." And they're like, "That's like right now. Someone wanted them out of here right now." And then Buck comes in and Emily's like, "And I know this. Suzu, open the cabinet." And then Jay falls out. So yeah, I loved how when they're talking about Jay and weird stuff, and we were just talking about how Jay hasn't talked about Elvis in forever, and then Maury's like, "That kid's a hoot," and I'm like, I love this. And then Buck comes in, and I'm like, "Buck, please stop! You're on a terrible trajectory right now." And then suddenly the plot was a lot more complicated than I expected, but I was loving it. And then Emily just goes off, and like I said, I was so happy that she specifically mentioned, like, I don't really trust Mr. Whittaker anymore because of what's happened, and I was so happy that they actually
Because, like, if she
talked
still
about that.
trusted Whit, I would have been upset.
I'm so glad that she specifically, like, they're not just brushing over everything Whit did in that is very important to me.
I don't remember who said it, but I thought someone said, like, to us that, or you told me someone said to us that, like, everyone keeps on treating Whit normal or something like that in future episodes after the 3-parter. And we were like, that doesn't sound good. But with this, it's like, no, Emily's still.
I was so glad it was
upset with
addressed.
There was just some good things in this album that I really wanted, but wasn't expecting, like with Bridget's trauma carrying over and Emily's distrust of Whit carrying over.
A very good album.
Emily is basically like the kid version of Tom at the moment, where it's just like,
I don't forgive you in that way?
Yeah, where it's like the I don't forgive you thing, which we don't usually get with a lot of like main important characters.
Yeah.
Because they're usually like really quick to forgive. Like it was such a big deal when Tom was just like, no, I don't forgive Richard. And we have Emily who's just like, no, I don't forgive Maury and Suzu for everything they did to me. I don't really forgive Whit either. And like for that, it's like how with Tom, like it wasn't just resolved right away or like in a couple episodes. Like you can tell like it's gonna take a while for her to like build up her trust again. And I'm so excited for this. I am here for this. This is good content.
So good. Okay.
This album continuously... You know what the main theme for this album, Devin, was?
I do. What do you think it is?
Continually, like, positively surprising me in every single episode.
Incorrect,
like,
but I'm glad that also that happened.
Well, for me, it was this. Like, first episode, jumping off.
Okay, we're not talking about a review yet. We're about to get there.
No, just really, really quick.
Just wait until we talk about the album in a minute. What's your rating for this episode?
You go first. I went first last time. I need time to think.
I might give it 5 out of 5 again because I really liked the character stuff and the way it was built upon. I liked the way that Emily had this outburst and addressed her feelings in a shockingly honest and really harsh way. And I liked, getting to see Suzu and Maury working together with Emily and them trying to work on being like, hey, it's fine. We're doing this stuff. It's good, right? It's good. And her trying to balance out her feelings and struggle with that we got Jay and Buck and Jules all up in the mix. The NPCs that we got in detention were really funny, and Miss Adelaide's just constant consternation and just being very much like you said, like Arnold in Magic School Bus. I knew I should have stayed home today. I'm definitely making this other teacher cover detention next time.
I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I think everything was really good. For me, it personally just did not feel like a finale episode. Like, in terms of stakes and stuff like that. It did have the emotional drama at the end, but I just wanted, like, a little bit more hard-hitting content from this episode.
I think it's
I
the
don't know if I
cliffhanger
would...
it ended on was the most finale feeling part of it. Was like leaving it on that, like, what?
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know if there were any episodes this season that really felt like a finale kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like, I don't know. I'm wondering if maybe I would have liked it more if we swapped this episode and the last episode.
Mm-hmm.
So that, like,
it bookends with that.
Bookends with, like, Wyatt and Bridget.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, maybe the fact that, like, it didn't bookend with Wyatt and Bridget made me less, like, it made me more surprised with the fact that they did all the callback stuff with Bridget, because if that one was a finale, I would have expected that. But I don't know. It's this weird liminal space in my mind with these two episodes where I think it's just partially because the last couple finale episodes for the last several seasons have been, like, very big. And then this one, like, wasn't really until the last couple minutes. But, like, all the character stuff in this episode was very, very good.
Yeah. So, we're going to talk about this whole album now. There's a lot to talk about and a lot of, like, crossover and connection stuff to talk about how things wove together through this album really well.
Okay, I just really quickly want to say, like I was saying before, every single episode in this album, like,
we haven't started
successfully really surprised me. Started with what?
We have to cut the recording so that we can come back in with time about the album summary.
Okay.
Can't make it too long or we're going to lose the recording.
That's true.
All right, we'll cut to that now. So here we go now. Finding a Way, album 70, yes.
Okay, so Jay in Jumping Off, Jumping In. Everything with Bridget in that episode. Christmas bells.
So these are your pleasant surprises, right?
Yeah, my pleasant surprises. Christmas bells. The heck was that ending, writers? Auto response. Just everything with Buck at the ending. And everything with, I'm tired with
Full
the
House.
guy.
I said Full House.
Full House, thank you. My fan's on again.
Eugene being willing to throw hands with Full House.
Heck yeah. And the recording of Unrelatable. I have not listened to that.
Yes, I'm going to talk about it.
I'll have to listen to that.
It's just, it basically covers what we've talked about before. It's them talking about recording remotely during COVID. Because this was the first episode they did, the one that they were talking about.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. I didn't think that this one was during COVID. They did a good job with that.
And they wrote it specifically as a COVID recordable episode in mind. I'll talk about it when we get to Unrelatable. But yeah, I would listen to it. It added a lot more context to
just like everything, pretty much, especially the ending. And the Protector, just all the Bridget stuff was very surprising.
Yep.
And let's call the whole thing off just the ending with Emily. So, yeah, this album has really, like, done a number on my expectations.
So, like I said, I realized while re-listening to it that there's a common theme in this album, and I probably wasn't intentional, but it's not just a common element. So, in one episode, Unrelatable, it's just kind of there more as a major element of the story, but in all of the other episodes, I would say it is, at least on some level, an actual theme to take something away from. That is the same between everything, and that is trauma. Jumping Off, Jumping In, and The Protector are both about Bridget and sort of Wyatt's trauma about Bridget drowning and how they process that and deal
their
with it
mom,
and
too,
deal with
in
the
the second
triggers. Yeah.
episode.
And Carla as well. Auto response is about Buck's relationship trauma from the past that's hurt his ability to trust in people that they care for him, which is why he is trying to like act out in these ways and take the car. Let's Call the Whole Thing Off is about Emily's inability to trust the Rydells after the trauma that they caused to her, which ends up like spilling forth at the end because she isn't dealing with it properly and she's unable to forgive them. Christmas Bells is about Longfellow learning to process through all the different tragedies that happened to him. And then Unrelatable isn't really about the theme that way, but it certainly is a depiction of a very traumatic event that Connie is going through and that's going to stick with her for a while. So all of these episodes involve trauma and dealing with trauma in some way.
You are completely right. I kind of want to change the cover now, so it's like over
Trauma,
2
trauma, and
hours of
trauma.
stories, finding a way, over 2 hours of just like hurt/comfort.
Angst and hurt/comfort.
Angst.
Okay, so first episode, jumping off, jumping in. I adore how they didn't just let Bridget's trauma lie with this episode, but they kept on addressing how it continues to affect her later in the album. Because at first it seemed like, oh, this is just kind of a background thing. It came around at the end of the episode, and then we had a whole other episode about it, and I love it. Victoria wondered before why Cooper didn't intervene sooner the second time when Bridget was drowning, because he was the lifeguard. But Bridget, right before she began, she clearly called his name out, and she told him, we're going to begin the demonstration now. This is not a real drowning, so it's okay. And he's like, not a real drowning, got it. And then she started. So that he was like actively fighting the impulse to rescue her, but that's why he didn't jump in to do it, because she was like, it's just fake. I'm telling you, starting right now, and go. And I'm glad I didn't comment on this before, but at the end, Chris gives an excellent safety PSA, which is to not try to go and swim to rescue someone who's drowning if you're not properly trained, because they could drag you down with them and you could both drown.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. It reminded me of like the Golden albums.
Yeah,
with, like,
don't throw water on the
fire.
Like don't throw water on the TV. Yeah, I was like, that's a good thing to add for people. Like, if you aren't properly trained in swimming, don't try and rescue someone who's drowning. So I was glad that they put that in there.
Especially in like a lake or something like that, where there's like a current possibly that could
if you're swimming
drag
in a river
you with like an undertow
or a creek. Any other further thoughts to add on jumping off, jumping in?
I think my main takeaway was just like how good Bridget and Wyatt were in that episode, how surprised I was about like her trauma, and how much I loved Jay in that episode.
Yeah, Jay was great in it.
Jay was like an unknown deuteragonist in some way or something like that, like secretly behind the scenes, like dealing and processing with everything, like while the others are, and then you don't really realize that until the end. And how much I love that he wasn't like villainized in this episode.
Yes.
There's bad stuff he did and people do get upset about it, but it doesn't really feel like he's outright like villainized, because you can tell that he was like kind of a little bit traumatized too by like what happened and stuff. And
and also I just liked how much emphasis there was on not only like going to therapy to like helping you address through your stuff, but like even when you feel like, yeah, I'm fine, like I don't feel like I need therapy, the importance of understanding like that doesn't mean that you don't have underlying trauma that's still going to be like going on that you need to deal with, and that someone can help you with that if you go and see them, because then that's what happened in The Protector.
Steven Universe feature. I'm never going to get over that scene with Connie's mom. Someone made it for Tommy in animatic form for the Dream SMP, and it was like all the traumatic experiences and stuff like that, and it was so well done, and it just reminded me like how good that scene was and how much it caught like everyone who watches that show off guard, because we never thought that like the show would go there and like talk about like trauma and psychiatric help and like how trauma can reside in people and its lingering effects. And then like Odyssey did the same thing as Steven Universe Future with Bridget and just like pulled the wool
Well,
out
especially
from
for Steven Universe when they're talking about the
whatever.
physical damages, because it does a great play with the suspension of disbelief on like the physical damage that cartoon characters take, right?
Yeah.
A Bugs Bunny kind of style, like I'm getting messed up all the time, but I'm fine because it's a cartoon, and then being like, oh, there is actually a very real physical toll that's being taken.
It's funny. It's like the same thing as Happy Death Day, where it's just like something is very wrong with your body. We don't know what's going on, but your body's undergone all these traumas. And that's honestly like my favorite thing about the movie.
I completely forgot about that.
How like, spoilers for Happy Death Day, go watch it. It's really fun.
I'm watching it again later today.
Devin's gonna watch it tonight with his roommate. So it's basically like this horror movie where a character is stuck in a Groundhog Day loop, and every single time they're killed at the end of the day by this murderer who's hunting them down, who's masked so they don't know who it is, they like start the day over again. So they're trying to find out who their killer is, and they're trying to stop the loop. And then towards the end of the movie, when they wake up from one of the loops, they kind of like collapse on the ground and their body's in like a lot of pain, and they go to the hospital and they get scanned, and like their body has internally like kept all of the damages that's been done to them through each killing so far in the movie.
Of like being run over and stabbed and shot
being
and
like
poisoned.
Hit by a car and stabbed or like poisoned or something like that, and like all these damages, and it's just like, this should have killed you, but for some reason it hasn't, but you need to be very careful. And she basically realizes like, I can probably do like one more loop before I'm permanently dead because of all the damages that my body's gone through. And it's one of those things where it's so surprising because like in a Groundhog Day movie, you never really like maintain physical damages or something like that. Like that doesn't carry over. It's just kind of like your mental state carries over pretty much. But I was like so surprised, like pleasantly surprised by that. And yeah, I love that about that movie. I've never seen another Groundhog Day like do something like that, because it actually put a time limit on like how many times she could keep on like looping.
I actually thought about sending this episode to you, but in the last season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., there was a very similar Groundhog's Day style bottle episode that had that same thing where it's like we're working towards an impending thing, but there's only two characters who remember what happens between the loops, and we're getting closer to running out of time, and one of the characters always remembers everything, but the other character remembers everything between loops unless they get killed, in which case they forget everything and start from scratch again, but time is still continuing to run out.
That's cool.
And have only this time to figure out like who is causing us all to die and sabotaging the thing. So
wait, which characters?
Well, Daisy is the one who's like looping, but if she dies, then she forgets everything. And Phil, because he's an LMD now, a robot, he remembers everything all of the time.
I might watch that.
But everyone else, and it's just like a 5 or 10 minute loop that keeps on going while they're like in a ship going through a wormhole.
That's really
Oblivion.
cool.
It was a good episode.
I don't remember why we were talking about this in the first place. We were talking about trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about this episode other than the fact that I really liked it. I'm going to lose my voice soon.
Christmas bells. After the finale, I think it definitely supports the idea even more that Emily is indeed the subject of this ominous message, because she's about to embark on a new arc with the Rydells. So, you know, she's going to fall, and that set off in the same album as them putting this ominous message. So what does it mean? What's going to happen to Emily that is bad? Is it the Rydell's fault? And wasn't like
Olivia the other person who was... Yeah,
Zoe
she didn't
Olivia
even appear in this album that I can recall.
No, she didn't.
So it's definitely Emily.
Mm-hmm. Although,
which we
if it isn't,
figured already.
That's a good red herring if it isn't Emily.
It's Olivia, but like we don't see Olivia for 3 albums, and then when we finally see her, the horrible thing happens.
No, we haven't seen her for 3 albums because she's recovering after she fell down the stairs.
Oh, okay.
And they just didn't tell us about it at the time.
They're like, oh yeah, you know, you're worried about the Christmas spells thing. That's already happened. It's fine. Olivia's out of the hospital. It's fine.
Yeah. And apart from that, interesting story, but weird execution. We've talked about all of that already. Auto response. When Polehouse is talking about why Buck did what he did to him, he emphasized about the fact that right now Buck he's being, quote, in his first real home, end quote, which is very clearly Polehouse aiming specifically like at himself more than Buck in that wording. Now that we know that he was adopted, because Buck moved all over the place, but he was still with the same people all the time. So that phrase, like, in your first real home, was definitely more Polehouse talking about himself than about Buck.
Mm-hmm.
And I really hope that we actually dig deeper into Polehouse flashbacks and learn more about
Me too. I know I said this before, but like whenever we get more information on Polehouse's backstory, it's like so interesting. Like each time they add a little puzzle piece to like knowing more about him, it's always really, really well executed. And yeah, I enjoy it a lot. This was a good episode. Also, just everyone like showing how much they care for Buck. Oh, it's so
like
good.
It's a Wonderful Life, kind of like everyone showing up to support him.
It's so good. It's like you have his dad and his aunts. Jillian's the weird aunt, and you have his girlfriend question mark, and then his mom who sends aggressive vibes towards Polehouse through telepathy, but can't be there at the moment.
And then we have unrelatable. Okay, so Connie's reaction to the fire alarm, the way that like the music and everything, like just a minute after he talks about how he wrote a letter about all his mistakes, and Connie's in there and she was like, huh, that's strange kind of tone that you put me in your letter. And then having that and the way that like the music and her gasp happens and like the pause in everything, it's so good and spine tingling, the timing of it all. I didn't even realize, so I kind of got confused before when I was talking about Jackson's comment. So it is Jasmine who is making the shippy comments.
I thought it was a different person.
They're very similar names. So Jasmine was making the shippy comments. Jackson is someone whose comments Wooten kept on reading periodically, and he kept on saying like all these rude things like, bring back Wooten, like we don't want to hear any more about this. And he was being mean and annoyed about Connie taking over Wooten's show, and he's tired of all the Spencer drama. And at the end, that's when Wooten is like, nah, I'm not reading any more comments from Jackson.
Because when you said it was the same person, I was thinking, like, that's weird that they would be so negative on Connie, and then another guy comes in and they're like, yeah, ship him with Connie. But I know there are some people who are like that. They're like, put this man with a woman.
Well, they certainly are standing together. So the bonus feature on here that we missed in the initial review is about recording during COVID.
I don't know how we missed this. Did they, like, upload this?
It wasn't there because I think it didn't go up the same time as the episode. It must have gone up the next week, so when we recorded it, it was not up yet. So basically, this was the first episode that they recorded during COVID, and they kind of talked about like how the idea came about for the way that they did it, and Townsend was like, yeah, I knew about this software that I'd heard from other people that let them do it from home, so I suggested it to the team and we did it, blah, blah, blah. They decided to try and figure out ways to write a couple of episodes that were specifically like aimed at like using a low number of cast members and stuff like that, and so that's why they wrote this episode that is just Connie and Wooten and Jason, and then a fourth like one-shot character.
And then that one guy at the very beginning.
Ah, yes, that's true. So was that
also, was there a girl at the beginning too?
There was a couple. There was a couple voices. Yeah.
But that's like really easy
like
to just
single
get
lines,
someone to send in like 2 or 3 lines.
Exactly. Anyone could do that. Yeah. So they were like, we wanted something with very few actors that'll make it really simple. I think it was Marshall who wrote this episode. and
I can check.
talked
You keep
about
talking.
talked about how normally, you know, some people find like restrictions on the writing that way really hard, but he's one of those people who like really likes those kinds of like creative restrictions when it comes
Like
to writing.
the challenge and
Exactly. You put these boundaries on me and see what I can come up with in that framework.
It was written by Marshall and directed by him.
That's what I thought.
And then produced by Nathan and Dave.
So he did that, and then we've talked a couple times before about how they've mentioned like someone's computer crashing during the first recording, and not now we know they said that it was Katie
Oh no!
while
Katie.
recording this episode, which makes it extremely understandable with that context now why it caused such a standstill in the recording.
She
because
has the most lines in this episode.
Not just
probably.
that, but as they pointed out, there is not a single scene in the entire episode that does not have her in it. So when they lost her, they were like, there's literally no scenes without her. We can't like record other stuff while we're waiting for her to come back.
Oh, that's so stressful.
And when they kept on talking about like, they're talking about like losing connectivity and getting it back, and they were using like the Aram connect and disconnect sounds like in the bonus track to represent that.
That's cute. They're like, see, we still remember Aram, and all the Mitch fangirls were like, can we have Mitch back? And they're like, no.
So that's what the bonus feature was about. So it was nice after they've been talking about it in general to finally get those details, and knowing what we did about like, oh, we only got this many pages through like this whole script in that amount of time. It makes so much more sense now that we know that it was Katie losing connection during Unrelatable.
That's like the worst possible person
for the worst possible episode
to lose it for the worst possible episode. Yeah. Oh, that sucks. I'm glad that it worked out though in the end.
So that episode obviously was fantastic and amazing, chilling, bone tingling. The Protector we just talked about. All I'll say is Wyatt's line about investing in chairs was very funny to me. Why chairs? There's more people in the world every day. Where are they going to sit? Because that's like, you can't argue with that.
Why are you booing me? I'm right.
Yeah, and let's call the whole thing off. I just had even more appreciation the second time around for all the NPC kids in detention. They were very funny.
They were really funny.
I like how I just call like one-off characters like NPCs now. It's a much easier way to say it when we're talking about this stuff.
There was like a bit while I was playing Danganronpa last night, where a character was called an NPC, and then I like gestured wildly at the TV, and I was like, "You're all NPCs, except for like 2 of you."
That was one of my favorite jokes in the Jumanji remake. And they're like trying to talk to the person.
Yeah.
And then they're like, but what about this? And just keep saying the same line over and over. It's like, it's an NPC, man. It's not going to work. I haven't seen the second one.
The second one's really, really good too.
Okay.
Nick Jonas is in it again. And
did I see the second one? I don't think so. No, I don't.
The second one has like their grandpas.
I know that, yeah, because I saw the trailer. I don't think I've seen it.
I've only seen it once. I've seen the first one twice though. Dad had a copy of it, so Mom and I and him watched it.
I watched it at your birthday.
Yeah, Nick Jonas showed up in it again, and I was just celebrating every time he was on screen. Just like the first movie. Just me just losing my mind when actors who were big when I was younger unexpectedly show up in things I'm watching, and I have no clue they're gonna show up. Like when I watched The Greatest Showman for the first time and Zac Efron showed up, and then I realized he was a main character, and then me watching Jumanji for the first time and Nick Jonas showing up and me being like, oh, he's also a main character, and just losing my mind both times. It's really funny to me.
Okay. Episode ratings for this album. On the bottom, I'm going to put Christmas Bells.
Yeah.
It's kind of tricky for the rest of them. I'm putting... Okay. Christmas Bells on the bottom, and then I think
I'm trying to figure out which one's my favorite.
my favorite, I mean,
Because I know which one my least favorite is, and then try and figure it out from there.
I did rate the Protector the highest.
You can change your mind, though.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to think about. I think if I go from the top down, the Protector, and then Unrelatable, and then auto response. Let's call the whole thing off, jumping in, and Christmas spells. I don't want to give jumping in the second to bottom spot, but there were so many good episodes.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it. Oh, this is so hard to do. This is so hard to do, except for Christmas bells. Sorry, Christmas bells. I'm gonna give it. Jumping off, jumping in. I think was my favorite of the album. It was just a really strong start, in my opinion.
Mm.
And then auto response. Some of these I just want to tie together. Okay, I will say, this is like barely.
Yeah, I wanted to tie jumping off, jumping in, auto response, and let's call the whole thing off.
So for me, it's like jumping off, jumping in, very like basically same thing,
mm-hmm.
auto response.
Mm-hmm.
And then underneath that, Unrelatable and then the Protector. But those two, like, I almost swapped them. It's a very close call. And then let's call the whole thing off and Christmas bells. Christmas bells is the rest.
It's like when you see a scale model of the solar system, and it's like, here's the sun, here's the planets,
here's all the planets, and then
Pluto is like
Pluto's just way out there. I'm sorry to the writer of Christmas bells. I don't remember who wrote it.
It was Phil.
I'm sorry, Phil.
I'm not.
What?
I'm not. I stand by what I've said.
On one hand, I'm not sorry because I've complimented so many of Phil's episodes throughout his career. But yeah, we're just on this weird, but nice writer appreciation kick, and it all started with jumping off, jumping in.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's been our theme episode wise for this album.
Overall, I'm gonna give this album 4.8 out of 5. It was so good overall. We had so many great episodes and dealing with like really hard topics in a really good way.
I'm gonna give it a.
We both had an episode that like spoke to us really directly, like at the time that we listened to it.
Man, now I feel like I should have put the Protector higher up on my ranking. Yeah, because I remember just like sitting there for some bits of it when I wasn't baby raging over, like internally over Birth by Sleep a little bit because I was so trapped in the labyrinth. But yeah, that episode was really good. That one hit me really hard. I don't know what to give this album. I think that I'm also going to give it like 4.8. That seems pretty fair because 4.5 feels too low to me.
Mm.
This album was very, very good. It's been a long time since there's been an album I can think of that's just like either completely delivered on every single episode for me, or just had something like really good at one point in each episode. And you can tell which ones I'm talking about with those ones because Christmas Bells is also included in this album. Yeah.
Well, especially one that isn't just like the last album was good, but there was only 3 distinct episodes in it. So it was like riding the coattails of like multi-parters. These were all separate single part episodes.
Mm-hmm. Which is a lot harder to do. Like to have that many that like
because it means you need to
instead of just having like 3 that are good.
You have to hit twice as many bangers, and you have to accomplish them in less time because it's shorter stories.
And like more plots, more characters, more original content.
Yeah.
Because like this is kind of, I don't know if I want to say problem, but it's a thing that, like, because there's so many episodes of Odyssey at this point that we talk about a lot, where it's just like there's a lot of rehashing of like certain themes, which is fine. We have to do that because there's so many episodes.
Yeah.
But like there was so much original stuff in this album compared to like a lot of previous albums.
That's true.
That like we've never talked about on the show, or at least like
not like this
in any way like this.
Yeah.
And
that's a good point.
I really love that. Like with
and
the
then Christmas
first,
Bells, which just
like with
felt like
all of Bridget's
like it as well.
Yeah, Christmas Bells is pretty much it as well. But like with Bridget's trauma, we've never addressed trauma like this in this way. We usually don't really address trauma
in kids at all
in this show, especially not on this level. With Let's Call the Whole Thing Off, like Emily snapping, we've never really had a kid character just like go off like that. We've had some adult characters like kind of go off like that, but never any kids and never
like
wit.
A protagonist.
Basically. Like
kid.
never a protagonist character, let alone a kid, let alone snapping at wit, because wit is like
in a justified way.
Yeah. Unrelatable.
Enough
Everything
said,
about unrelatable. Oh my goodness. It was, it's the red eye of the Odyssey episodes, like you said.
Yeah.
And then like auto response, which like we've talked about like adoption and foster systems and stuff like that before. But this was just like a really good way of talking about it.
Well, not
and like
just
talking
that,
about
like
the adjustment process and like receding and like
the ways that being hurt in like relationships past can make you close yourself off and like purposefully self-sabotage relationships in the future because you don't trust people.
And like other than Christmas Bells, we've never gotten episodes like this before. And I really, really love that about this album.
Yes.
Good album. Good job, writers. Good job, voice actors. Good job, sound team and editors and everyone.
Yeah.
It's a lot of love for the crew, this album.
So, what are we doing? 200 episodes. Congratulations, we made it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, The Martyr and the Rooster.
No, that is not what we're doing next.
Oh, sorry. We get to celebrate by being lazy. Yay,
by doing
laziness.
Something we already recorded.
We already recorded this at Christmas, which is why we're together during this. So it's going to be a movie review. We recorded 2 at Christmas. Don't know when the other one's going to drop, but this is the first one.
Yes, it is Go West, young man.
Okay.
Yes, so.
You didn't laugh at that. Now I'm sad.
Oh, I didn't see. I thought you just stood up and fixed your ear, but I didn't see what you did.
No, I was about to leave and go west.
Oh.
I don't know which way west is, though, in my room.
Okay, so that is what we're doing next time. Until then, thank you for joining us for 200 episodes on our side of the YouTube. I've been Devin Francis, also known as Dr. Blackard.
Yeah. Hello. Thank you. I will look at... Oh, it's a card from Gabe. What a nice way to end this episode. I've been Victoria. And as you can see on my address, which I won't hold up to the camera, because, Yeah.
And this has been the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast.
Oddcast. Bye.
Bye.